So I'm going to talk about a couple of things today, something on retirement, and then some stuff on the market, gold, silver, a few interesting points there. But let's start with this idea of phased retirement. So Eli, you mentioned we've done several of these plans. We've had several situations here as of late when we've been planning around this for clients that like the idea or want to kind of move forward with the idea of a phased retirement. So Eli, start with kind of telling us what you think of or what you mean when you hear phased retirement, and then we'll get into like how to plan for that.
I get really excited to talk about this because it applies to so many of the people that are in our area. A phased retirement is you're in your 40s, 50s, and you're working probably the most demanding of all careers that you've had so far, or the most demanding job. You're looking down the pipe, and you know that retirement's coming maybe in like 5 or 10 years, but you don't think that you can actually work this demanding job for another 5 or 10 years. So that phased retirement is considering, can you, knowing that your timeline is sometime in the next 5, 10 years, can you go work a less demanding job, earning less income, maybe take some distributions from your portfolio to solve for that gap, but enjoy your work for a period of time. Maybe you have to work a few more years than you would if you worked the demanding job, but you're able to phase that retirement in. So it's an easier transition from the most demanding job to a less demanding job to actual full retirement instead of just working that demanding job for 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we get this question a lot, or a lot of interest in this, because a lot of people, have, these higher paying, stressful, demanding jobs that it just takes it out of you. And so, very open to, well, if we could get to the point where even if it meant we weren't saving money, we weren't contributing to our 401k, when can we get to the point where we could go do something that we really enjoy, not really worrying too much about how much money we're making from it, but maybe something that still provides some healthcare benefits or some, benefits there, so we're not having to pay for it out of pocket. And a lot of people seem to be open to that and like that, versus the alternative. I feel like it was more popular, with kind of the boomer generation and, my parents' generation to say, hey, I'm just going to work same job or similar job all the way up until, cold turkey, quit, and then that's my point of retirement, and then I don't do anything. And I say don't do anything just from a job income perspective.
Literally sit on your couch and do nothing.
Yeah, which is fine. We don't encourage that, but that's fine.
The younger generation, especially, I get a lot of younger people, your age, your whippersnapper, young age, and they come in and they say, man, and they're doing great. For Eli's a great example. Eli's doing all the right things in life and so on. He could retire. You can retire earlier than I can, right? You've done all the right things early on. You're doing all the right things. A lot of young people are doing that. Great information we have online, just big resources. Everybody has the opportunity to do better. And the idea of retiring at 50 always comes into play. And we, as being advisors, seeing this through our clients' eyes through all these years, there's a lot of things you have to consider, even if you want to retire at 50. Mm-hmm. Most people don't get it, but a lot of our retirees, one of the biggest things they have when they come in, at least to me, they don't know what to do anymore. Mm-hmm. So if retiring at 50 sounds great, it does sound great, right? But what do you do for the next 40 years?
Yeah.
So, and then phasing retirement, phasing work, kind of actually, and I've had a lot of people say, I want to do charitable things. I want to do stuff like that. So it's not just, it's us planning. Mm-hmm. I think if you know your number, know how much you need, and then you have that dream of retiring a little bit early, it's like that's part of the plan, is us building out a phased retirement, if that makes sense. So even though we get people in that want to reduce what they're doing and the stress of their job, you also can actually plan for that. And the younger folks, I think younger generation is going to be more in tune to that. But there's a lot of pitfalls like health insurance. How do you pay for that? All that kind of stuff that we have to talk about.
You guys hit an interesting point. The first thing of planning for a phased retirement is planning for what you're going to do with your free time. Planning for having a purpose around the extra time that you have coming in. And that will especially be true once you reach the full retirement age. But there's a lot of studies that have shown cognitive decline can happen if someone retires and then goes to doing very little. And so one of my favorite ideas, and feel free to take this, is I would like, if I'm going to phase a retirement, I'd like it to be a T to T retirement. I heard that the other day and I loved it. I work Tuesday to Thursday. And that to me is like a perfect phased retirement. So if
Yeah.
you could structure a job that you work Tuesday to Thursday, you get 5-day weekends or
4-day.
4-day week.
Cognitive decline has already started.
Time
over
2 hours
here.
of sleep.
It's time to blink.
Yeah.
We understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's also there's a lot. I think there's more financial literacy out there, more readily available to go educate yourself. What should I do? What shouldn't I do? But we also have to be honest with ourselves. Like some of this is from a historical timing perspective, right? Had the market not done anything for the last 15 years, you wouldn't have near as many people in the position to say, "Hey, can we retire in our early 50s?" Right? And so taking that into account and having, I think, the humility to say like, okay, this wasn't all like pat yourselves on the back. If you're in that spot, you've probably made a ton of really good decisions.
Yeah.
And you maybe even sacrificed in a lot of ways to get yourself to that spot. But also having the humility to understand like, just because the last 15, 20 years, whatever, have been really good doesn't mean we can expect that for the next 40. Because if you're talking about retiring at 50, you're talking about being retired longer than you worked.
Exactly.
So now you're asking your money to produce that you saved over a shorter period of time to produce all of the income you need for longer than it took you to save it. And so there's just a lot of variables to be aware of. There's a lot of things to take into consideration, a lot of planning. Planning becomes like, we've talked about this recently, like planning for those younger clients that want to retire. It can be really tricky
More
because
daunting.
there's so many variables and so many unknowns that you have to try to account for. And there's, to be honest with you, it's just you can't like perfectly predict and know what's coming. So you do the best you can, but it can be really hard.
I tell you what, you hit on something so fantastic. 08, we forget about 08 financial crisis, right?
boy.
That was a long.
Eli, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was a
in
long-
advance, I should. I teed this up and I shouldn't have.
No, you did. It was perfect. But the 08 financial crisis, and a lot of people in the same boat could not. There was less of this happening then because people lost 50, in some cases, 50%
I mean,
of their assets.
if you turned
in 1 year,
if you were 40
yeah,
in 1998, right?
yeah,
By the time you got to your early 50s, you probably weren't in a spot where you're like, man, we can retire early, right? Because the market,
yeah. The market took your money away.
Didn't do anything for a decade.
For a
And so-
decade, it stayed flat. And that is we've been on this terror of market outperforming, and I think it's gotten to the point where we kind of expect it. And you can even see it in reviews. We're up, we're doing great, we're outperforming the markets, or we're right at the markets, and people are wanting more. And that's just, you can tell that because people's brains start to think this is just how it works. And it is not. And that's something you should, always in the planning process, be prepared and make sure that you can afford.
Well, it gets hard because
ups
when
and
you're
downs
talking
in the
about
market.
retirement, you're talking about, hey, I'm not putting any new money into
Not
the market.
adding,
Or
yeah.
I'm maybe having to start taking some money out. This is where, sequence of return risk starts to become a legitimate thing. It's like when you're 20, 25 and you're investing, it's like, there's a lot
cares?
of truth to just like, don't worry about what the
Don't
market
worry.
does. Just dollar cost average
Your
in, save.
contribution rate matters more than the investment return.
Correct. Right.
Exactly.
Now, you get to the point where you're retiring. It's like if the market goes up 10% compounded for the next 10 years or doesn't do anything for the next 10 years, both of which have happened historically, so there's precedent, like that matters a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's significant. And so that's just one example of like the planning. How do you plan for that? Of like, hey, if the market crushes it, it's like solves
Easy.
a lot of problems.
Yeah, easy.
Right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't, how are we going to adjust? How are we going to take income? Because we're trying to fund 30, 40 years. And so it's really fun, but to use your word, it can be kind of daunting when you're trying to guide someone through that kind of a time horizon.
Well, it's a great. I had somebody come in recently. We had a kind of a protected piece of the portfolio, and this is kind of true, but it made 7.5%, right? And they're very upset because everything else did really well. But this piece was meant to be the safe piece, and 7.5% was actually out, very good for that safe piece. And I had to kind of like it's not me being their parent or whatever, but you almost have to be like, this is part of that. And again, we're getting spoiled with returns, and we just think, and I'm talking about just in general terms, where we think that's normal. Where our job is to kind of find out what our clients need what's the least amount of risk they need to take to achieve their goals, and then try to guide them to that. But I would say that when you're getting close to retirement, it's so important to know your risk tolerance, your risk score, how we're investing to accomplish that, how we're trying to get your money to last to 90, not to next year. But also, we solve that in our office by doing lots of reviews all the time.
Well, and some of it depends on like
keep up with it.
What are you open to moving forward? Like if you're like, hey, when I'm done, like I want to be more conservative so that I never have to worry about maybe going out and getting a job again. Like if you retire at 50, or you might be someone saying like, you know what, if the market went through a rough stretch and I needed to go get another job,
I'd just go back to work.
I'd just go back to work. I'd go do something, make some income. Right, two different scenarios. Like you can maybe afford to be a lot more aggressive if you're open-minded and open to, if the market doesn't give us what we need for a period of time, like I'll go make some income. Like I'm fine with that. So it's very specific to the individual. It can be very tricky. I think the whole idea of this phased retirement is awesome, right? I'm all for people getting to the point in life where they can go do something they love and enjoy. If that's not, hopefully that's your job where you're making a ton of money. But if it's not, getting to the point in life as soon as possible where you can go do that, I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm much more of a fan of that than just the whole like retiring early and not doing anything, because I think we're like God created us to be productive and have some kind of routine, and that can be hard for a lot of people, not necessarily everyone, but it can be hard for a lot of people if it's not somewhat forced on you because you have structure that's kind of being put on you from a job or, and so, so I love the idea of it. I think it's cool that a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are in the position to think about that. But there's a lot of variables to consider.
One thing, we think that we can retire and go play golf all day and we'll be really happy. But trust me, golf makes you angry. So just be careful. We do that. I've had more angry, older, retired guys on the golf course than anything else because golf just is so frustrating. So that's not always the answer.
Sure, John. So we've mentioned several times there's a lot of different variables.
Yeah,
so let's start talking through
variables.
a couple of the concrete ideas around the variables that we should be considering. So the first variable that we're going to talk through anytime that someone is retiring is always going to be fixed expenses versus your variable expenses. So every single month, what is a fixed expense that we know is fixed? And are any of those expenses dropping off in the short term or near term? So oftentimes people will have car loans or something like that they plan to drop off and don't plan to buy a car for an extended period of time. So the beginning of these phased retirement plans always starts with how much do we have to have going out every month? Then you start to say, okay, I know what I have to, but what's my want tos? Like, how much am I going to need for my want tos? And is that $5,000 a month? Is that $3,000 a month? And so you can start to build out, hey, if I go make $50,000 in this lower paying job, I need to distribute $3,000 a month from my portfolio. Okay. How long can that last, or how long do I need to be working at that distribution rate? And so you can start to build the plan, but it all starts with how much are your fixed expenses, and then how much are those variable expenses that are upcoming. And
how kind of like I said earlier, how open you are to changes. How okay are you with the variable truly being variable?
Yeah,
right.
Like saying, okay, this year we're not going to do those trips.
Yeah,
we're not going to do those things because of X, Y, and Z. Again, if you're open to that and you're honest with yourself, like, yeah, we're good with that. We can still be happy. Then it's like that makes things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because we can say, okay, we're not going to distribute anything from your portfolio this year.
If you're talking about before 59 and a half, this goes back to pre-planning is so important.
Okay, so
you need to have money coming from the right spot.
The next variable that we need to consider is, are you 59 and a half or not? Right. So if you're
preemptive.
Yeah, if you're not 59 and a half, then we have to come up with where your distribution's going to come from. So there's several different ways that we can do this. I'll kind of queue up a couple and you guys can talk through them. The first of which is the rule of 55 distribution, which I'm actually implementing for a client here in a couple months. Does anyone want to talk through that?
Yeah, I can tell you. So I had one just recently that we tried to get the rule of 55 implemented and found out that particular 401k plan did not offer it. So like some plans do, some plans don't. His particular plan, we were excited about doing the rule of 55. You can explain it if you want to, but I thought that was kind of a cool option until we couldn't do it. So some plans do, some plans don't.
So the first
better
step,
than 72T. But
rule of 55 is taking distributions from your 401k before you're 59 and a half, after you've retired from a company or left a company, after the age of 55.
Yeah.
So you're older than 55. You leave a company. You can take distributions from the 401k.
From that 401k.
From that specific 401k before you're 59 and a half years
Yeah.
old. Plan permitting.
Yeah.
And that's a very, as you mentioned, that's a very important part of the rule of 55. Some plans allow it. Other plans don't.
Fully taxable if it's traditional, just like
Just
as
no
you'd
penalty,
expect,
yeah.
just no penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So it just bumps that age up a little bit. So great option.
Yeah. The next option is taking what is called a 72T distribution. So that's a forced required distribution on an annual basis, and you have a couple ways that you can calculate this. Fidelity has a pretty good calculator if you're like wanting to throw an idea out. But basically, you have to take a distribution every single year from an IRA. It's a minimum of 5 years or 59 and a half years old.
Whichever's longer.
Whichever's longer. So you have to take it out for 5 years, and that has to continue. So that's another option, but it's not flexible. It's really annoying to.
Yeah, I don't like. I've done one of those in my. I'm long in the tooth. We figured that out, and I've done one of those, and we didn't like it. Like we did it for the 5 years, and it worked, but it just wasn't comfortable. Client couldn't get any. Here's the deal: if you take anything beyond that, you're going to be then taxed and penalized on everything you took out prior to that. So if you break that rule,
Yeah, it can be tricky.
It
It's
can be
not
tricky,
something
so-
to be like afraid of, but if you can plan and avoid it.
yeah, if it's in the plan, fine. If
So,
it works.
So the idea that I like the most, and I think most of us would implement this more often than not, is if you know that you're considering a hybrid form of retirement, like what we're talking through, a phased retirement, consider contributing more to brokerage accounts. And that's, if you know you're going to retire before 59 and a half, stop over contributing to these accounts that have restrictions and go and look at contributing to something like a brokerage account that has no restrictions on when you can distribute from the account.
And another way, non-qualified accounts.
Yeah.
Non-IRAs. Yeah, I agree totally with that. Because I think young guys and gals, when they're building their retirement plan, it's all about putting in the 401k, getting the max, and that's hard to do that sometimes when you're young, building a family, all that stuff. But I always kind of think like, if you can have a bucket outside of the retirement for this very reason, in case you decide in life or you need it for some reason, it's good to have that.
And if you have family members that are in their 40s, they've contributed pretty heavily to retirement accounts. I just ran a planning session where they were both 40. They almost had $1 million in pre-tax accounts, but nothing in brokerage accounts. So we actually dropped their contribution rate down to the minimum
To
for
get
their
the match.
401k to
Yeah.
get the match
Yeah.
and increase their brokerage so that if they ever did want to do this kind of flexible retirement, they have these buckets that they can pull from. So that's another consideration. And probably the variable that most people want to hear some thoughts around is, what do you do for insurance?
Dun, dun, dun. Such a great topic. Folks right now, I'm just going to tell you guys real quick. They let it slide in December and January where we didn't have the subsidies, I had one client as a real life example. His insurance went up 3 times what he was paying. Now he's not retired yet, but this is just insurance because he's not in it. He pays his own private insurance. Insurance is expensive. And now I think they're going to get it worked out, hopefully, and so on. But that is going to be the biggest problem for most folks. And a lot of people, now I will say this, I think some people over fear this. I've had clients that have plenty of money, and when we do their budget and everything, they can afford what insurance costs, and they just are so afraid of it that they wait till 65. They work till 65, and it ends up being they didn't have to, right? So I think you should look at that regardless, and just find out what the costs are. But that is something some people you shouldn't overlook, but you also shouldn't overemphasize it. You can just find out what that is.
Shameless plug. I actually I have a video coming out. Thursday? Friday. Zoe corrected me. On Friday, I have a video coming out specifically around insurance if you retire before age 65.
Can't wait.
Can't wait.
I'm not going to sleep until Friday.
So if you want to see some of the specifics around options that you have, how it's structured with the new subsidy, how the current structure looks. With
Perfect timing.
Did
you do that on purpose?
It's almost like we planned.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plugger, you.
Yeah. No, Eli's data briefs are great.
Oh, they are fantastic.
A lot more helpful than these podcasts, I'm sure. So,
I'm sure.
Definitely check that out. But
yeah, so there are options for insurance. It's either going to cost you a lot or it's going to cost you a little, depending on your income. So where are you taking distributions? What does that income look like? There's some complexity to that. really, I would say, because I just did a 6-minute video specifically on that topic, go watch the 6-minute
Yeah.
video. It'll be more helpful than anything we
Is
can
that
talk
out?
through.
It's not out yet?
It's out on Friday. So this
It's
is
out on this Friday.
This
okay.
is out on Tuesday, Wednesday.
This is the little
Yeah,
teaser.
just a couple
No,
days
it's good,
later.
though. I'm glad you have that coming out. I like that.
Okay. Anything else on phased retirement? Things we should be aware of?
I mean, there's quite a few on like where to take distributions and things like that. But
Yeah,
it
there's a
gets
lot.
it gets very specific to the individual.
And yeah, exactly. I was thinking about mentioning something around like asset allocation and how you should be thinking through that. But it is so specific.
To the plan.
To the plan and to the
Yeah.
individual. And
All thoughts and opinions shared in this recording belong to the participants. This podcast is meant to inform and educate and should not be seen as solicitation or endorsement for business.